My video for today is going to be all about Roy Acuff. I'm hoping that I'll be able to share some information with you that maybe you didn't know about Roy Acuff. Of course, I'm sure a lot of the things I'll say, if you're a big country music fan, you'll have known all along. But our first stop is going to be at the Spring Hill Cemetery in Nashville, Tennessee, to visit the grave of Roy Acuff and some of his family members. So let's head over to the Acuff family plot. It's really not hard to find this marker in the cemetery at all. As soon as you come through the main gates of the cemetery, if you look a little bit to your right up the hill, you'll notice this rather tall marker with a fiddle on the top, and that is the Acuff family plot. So let's see if we can find the actual marker there for Roy Acuff. And here is the marker that says Roy Acuff, but it's not the one we're looking for. I'll come back to this one in a few minutes. We're looking for Roy Claxton Acuff, the man that is often been referred to as the king of country music. And here's Roy's gravesite. And of course, next to Roy on the right side is the marker of his wife. That is of Mildred Louise Douglas Acuff. Mildred was also a native Tennessean by birth, and Roy was born in the small town of Maynardsville, which is in East Tennessee. And on the left-hand side of him is buried his mother and then his father. I'll talk about those in a little bit more detail in a minute. That is Gladys Mildred Acuff is a sister-in-law, and Claude is his brother. And I'll talk a little bit more about Claude when I get to the next stop, because he had a hand in helping Roy with that endeavor he went on. So let's go back to the first Roy Acuff we looked at. That's Roy Neal Acuff. This is Roy and Mildred Louise's son, and he did some recording and music himself, but he was more comfortable working behind the scenes, and he ended up being an executive at the Acuff Rose Music Publishing Company, which Roy Acuff was co-owner in. I know it's probably not going to come as a surprise to you when I say Roy Acuff has been inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame, but did you know he was the first living person that was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame? Everyone before him had already passed away, and of course today there's several in there that are still living. There's the marker of his wife, Mildred Louise, and she would play an active role in the Acuff Rose Publishing Company when Roy was in a car wreck. Also, there's Roy's mother, Ida, and Ida was a piano player and, of course, a homemaker. And there's his dad's marker. It is said that Roy's dad was a small-town lawyer. He was also a Baptist preacher, and he was a fiddle player. So Roy had some good musical talents in his family, with his mom playing the piano and his dad being a fiddle player. Of course, you see a fiddle on the Acuff marker there. I guess that would symbolize for his dad too, but Roy was a good fiddle player, as well as Roy played the harmonica. Would it surprise you to find out that Roy Acuff was good in sports at school? He liked basketball, football, and baseball. He played all of these, but he was pretty good at the baseball, and even played in, like, I think, some minor leagues after high school. But that would end when he had a sudden stroke while playing baseball. I'm sure most people would realize, if they're country music fans, that Roy Acuff's band was called the Smoky Mountain Boys, and that is very fitting, as he was from East Tennessee, where the Smoky Mountains are located. But did you know, before the band was called the Smoky Mountain Boys, it was called the Crazy Tennesseans? I'm sure Roy was glad to get a name change before he became popular, because the Smoky Mountain Boys sounds so much better than just calling them crazy Tennesseans. Now we're going to take a final look at the back side of the marker to see if there's anything on it before we leave and head to our second stop in the Roy Acuff story. As you can see, it's just the words Acuff on the back of the marker, but it also gives you an idea how close it is to the main entrance. As I mentioned earlier, it's easy to spot. But just across the road from the Spring Hill Cemetery is that of the Veterans Cemetery, and you can see the many white markers across the road from this view. Now we're going to head on to Clarksville, Tennessee to get a better idea of what a good businessman Roy Acuff was, not just in the Acuff Rose Music Publishing Company, but he had other things. Well, you'll notice the sign to the cave, and we'll get to the cave in just a moment, and I'm referring to Dunbar Cave here in Clarksville, Tennessee. But first I wanted to look at a sign that caught my eye, and this area that you're looking at where the sign is and the flowers and all, this once was a swimming pool, even before Roy Acuff owned it, but during his time as the owner of this land and all, Roy Acuff had a swimming pool here open to the public, and Roy bought the land, and which included Dunbar Cave in 1948. The sign has a lot of good information about Roy Acuff and the cave on it, and I will mention just a few of the things, and you may want to pause it if you want to read the whole story on it. The sign tells you that Dunbar Cave can be traced back even in this land as far as 1875, as who owned it and whatever, and it is named for a man that was like the first one that had a deed to the land on it, Mr. Dunbar. But it also had, at the cave entrance, since it had cool air, they had built a wood floor over the years, and they would have events here such as singing and dancing and all. And it tells that it was a big band era thing that went on here at Dunbar Cave. At the entrance up to the cave where the cool air was coming out, the big band people such as Tommy Dorsey, Glenn Miller, and Benny Goodman even performed here at the cave. The sign will also tell you that Roy Acuff, once he owned the cave and the land and all, he would perform here on Tuesdays and Fridays when he wasn't out touring and everything. But I told you earlier that I would also let you know a little bit more about his brother Claude. The sign will let you know that Claude, which is a brother, along with another brother called Briscoe and his sister Juanita, would be managers of the property for Roy. So now let's head on toward the cave. I have a story to tell about this lake also. If you look across the lake, you'll see a building with several cars by it. That is Swan Lake Golf Course there at Clubhouse. And Roy Acuff had that built when he owned the property. He put in the golf course. It's no longer part of the state park area, but it is still operational today. Now a little bit on this lake, of course I said it was a man-made lake, and it was smaller to start with, but it is been dug out even bigger, and I remember it back from my younger years that it was a pretty active place because they had paddle boats that you could take rides out on with the paddle boats. As you can see, it is a active park for walking yourself or your pets, and they have several trails throughout the park. But we're headed to the cave to see where Roy Acuff would perform and all. And speaking of performing, his first big performance, I guess you would say, came on July the 4th in 1948. It had already, I think, Owen Bradley had performed for him the day before, but Roy was the headliner that day when it was like a grand opening as him being the new owner of Dunbar Cave. Well, we're getting ready to cross a little bridge, and I see a sign ahead, and interested to see what that has to say. But another Did You Know on Roy Acuff. I mentioned that he was in the Country Music Hall of Fame, and most of you would probably say I already knew that. But did you know that he has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in California? Did you know that Roy Acuff's paternal grandfather was a Tennessee state senator? Did you know that Roy Acuff himself ran for the governor of the state of Tennessee, even though he didn't win? They said he put up a good race. So now let's see what that sign has to say. Well, as luck would have it, the sign is telling a little bit more about Roy Acuff, the man we're talking about today. And I see on here where it talked about that he also ran for governor. But I hadn't mentioned before that it shows on the sign here that Roy Acuff joined the Grand Ole Opry in 1938. And Roy would also, it shows here some wonderful pictures, have an amphitheater, they called it, built here, because even though they went from the wood floor to a concrete floor in front of the opening of the cave, it wasn't going to hold all the people that came for miles around to hear all this. And there is Roy Acuff actually doing a performance. And they said the amphitheater could hold as many as 1,300 people there. So it was in the area, it said behind the sign. Of course, now it's all wooded area. Like I said, this is a state park, and you see the birdhouse there, but they said the seats were sloping down from the hillside there. So let's head on down to get a close look at the cave where Roy Acuff would also do a lot of performances at that entrance. Well, looks like I can see some building section just ahead. I can also hear the little spring that's running through the area. The little waterway there is called Idaho Springs, and it actually runs part of it through parts of the cave. This is not the main entrance into the cave, but just wanted to give you an idea just how big they had to start with before Roy built the big amphitheater for them to do music and dancing and having events. This would have been probably just for the dancing, as the cave entrance, they say, is where they would do the main band so they can have the cooling effect from it. And they said the acoustics is real good over here when they played. We'll take a quick look around here before we head up a flight of stairs to go to the actual cave entrance where the band and Roy Acuff performed in his early years at. But good time for another Did You Know on Roy Acuff. Did you know that Roy was one of 5 children in his family? I know you know, and I've already mentioned that he was a co-owner with Fred Rose and the Acuff Rose Music Company. But did you know it was one of Nashville's first major country music publishing companies? Did you know that some of the famous people he had signed there at the Roy Acuff Company was the likes of Hank Williams, Roy Orbison, and the Everly Brothers, just to name a few? I'm sure you have a lot more Did You Knows that I haven't mentioned here today. And if you do, I'd like for you, as we head up the steps, to think about it and send me a little comment telling me something that you think is very important about Roy Acuff that I've forgot to mention. And we're taking another little look there of the Idaho Springs going out, and this was the first section that would have had dancing and all there. But as we go up the hill to the top part, one of the first things you're going to see, it was such a busy place and all, even before Roy Acuff owned it, but especially after he owned it. And they also had put in here a concession type stand where you could get different refreshments and food and so. We'll peek around in that to see how that looked. And it's kind of neat that it's built in with the cave rocks around the area. Maybe a little too dark, but hopefully you can kind of see a little bit of it. And it actually has another little opening that goes over here. They would actually use some of the rocks and stuff, as you'll notice, it would work for benches and people to sit and whatever, such as the ones you're looking at now. But I think right in front of this area, sorry about the sunlight's reflection there, being the main section where the band would play. So let's just head over a little bit closer to the entranceway of the cave. As you can see, there would be some more seating actually for somebody if they got tired there on the left-hand side. And I can hear off at a distance, it looks like they've already started one of the cave tours, and they do still give cave tours here at the state park. And I will mention at this time that when I checked with them and went in, it is $18 for adults per a tour that you take, and also that the museum, which would have told a little bit more about Roy Acuff and all, is under being remodeled at the time. Well, you might call this the second floor we went to, where the cave entrance is, but there's steps that go up even one floor higher, so let's go up and see what that has to offer. It looks like that it is just where they may have had chairs or something. They might have done a little dancing here, or they might have just looked over the railing and all to watch the performers or listen to them and all. And as I close out this section on Dunbar Cave and a big part of Roy Acuff's life, there's one more stop here in Clarksville, Tennessee that I want to show you before I close the video. And while I've got your attention, I'd like to say thanks so very much for watching my video, and I hope you have a good day. And on to our final stop. The final stop we'll be making is going to be at Greenwood Cemetery here in Clarksville, Tennessee, and it will be to see the gravesite of Roy Acuff's sister, Juanita. As I mentioned earlier, Juanita, along with two of his brothers, was managers of the Dunbar Cave area when Roy owned it. Juanita was actually born with the birth name Nancy Juanita, and she's in section 11 here at the cemetery, and it's kind of easy to find because it has Phillips on the big headstone. And there is her husband's marker, and he looks like in a couple of the wars, World War II and the Korean War. Once again, thanks for watching.